Well, the U is somewhat back, I guess. You could talk about them being an ACC contender year in, year out for the first time since they joined the ACC back in 2004. And they're going to have another transfer quarterback after Cam Ward leaves for the NFL #1 overall draft pick. How will this pan out? We're going to discuss all that here today. Make sure you guys comment down below who you want me to do, what you think of Miami in 2024. You can wait until we get to the schedule breakdown and the schedule predictions, but make sure you comment down below what record you believe Miami will have. Make sure you like the video if you like the video and subscribe for more similar content, just like we are covering the Miami Hurricanes. We are trying to cover every single Power 4 school and hopefully have some time to tap into the Group of 5 as well for these big previews. All right, enough about that. We're going to talk about the Miami Hurricanes. That's all you guys came here for. So we're going to talk about the 2024 season in review. One of the most explosive offenses in college football a year ago, but also a defense that some might say was young, maybe a year away. Some might say was underdeveloped and under-talented. You can tell me what your opinion is. I personally believe it's a little bit of both. I think they didn't have a ton of depth. They didn't have a ton of great players, and they didn't develop talented kids out of high school very well. But Mario Cristobal has not been there a very long time, and it seems like they got the offensive side of the ball figured out with the offensive coordinator hire that he made last year in Shannon Dawson. Coming into year 2, we'll see how that goes, but looking back at last year, 10-2 was a disappointment because they lose 2 of their last 3 games, I believe it was, and they lose to Georgia Tech, in which they could not get off the field. Haynes King in that offense just grinded their way down the field, and Kyle McCord in Syracuse threw it all over the yard in the JMA Dome up in Syracuse to end the playoff hopes for the Miami Hurricanes. Ended up, by the way, losing after Cam Ward didn't play in the second half in the bowl game to Iowa State. So when you look at this Miami team this year, what are they bringing back compared to what they lost? Now, they did lose quite a bit. They lost Isaiah Horton to the portal. They also lost Xavier Restrepo, who had been a mainstay there. But when you're talking about replacing those receivers, I think they've done a good job tackling it. For starters, they bring in C.J. Daniels from LSU, previously at Liberty, who has been a really good player, an experienced player as well, and was a pretty solid receiver for that LSU offense a year ago. You're also going to hope for some development from guys from within. JoJo Trader, who, by the way, best buds with Jeremiah Smith, and everybody thought that he would be a great player. This is his chance to break out. Speaking of chance, maybe you're looking at a younger player in the same class, Chance Robinson, or Ray Joseph is also a player to watch out for. A couple of other transfers. They brought in Keelan Marion from BYU, who's got the explosive return ability. They're also very high on the true freshman Malachi Tony, and then Tony Johnson. Those are going to be the guys that you look at. Now on the offensive line, I love this offensive line. You got Francis Mauigoa, who is a really, really good tackle. He's going to play right tackle most likely, but I'm not positive about that. But he's going to be one of the top tackles in America. And I also think that they have depth there because Samson Okunlola was a talented kid a couple of years ago, not even starting yet. So we'll see if he ends up cracking the rotation here. Markel Bell, the more experienced tackle, and then the interior of the offensive line is great. Ryan Rodriguez is back, and as Cooper is back, and they bring in a starting center in James Brockermeyer, who comes from TCU, really solid player. Bottom line is this, with Mark Fletcher and Jordan Lyle, I think that those guys are going to be able to run the football. And look, Mark Fletcher, by the way, very impressive a year ago. And on top of all this, when you bring in an experienced quarterback in Carson Beck, look, I understand the problems that Carson Beck had a year ago at Georgia with the interceptions and stuff. Some might joke that it was the Cavender twin and that the Cavender twin was distracting him from football and he's going to Miami, but he's not with the Cavender twin anymore. Maybe the curse is broken. Maybe he's on a revenge arc. Who knows? Regardless, I have seen Carson Beck play very well, and ultimately in this system, I think it's going to work. I think this offense is going to be electrifying. They might might not have the receiver talent that they had, but again, that's going to be dependent on guys like JoJo Trader, Ray Joseph, of the like, to be able to be that. Elijah Lofton, Alex Ballman, by the way, really good player at Tulane, a tight end. They have two tight ends that they're going to be very comfortable with. Elijah Lofton, by the way, younger player who's ready to hit the scene, and they have the experienced guy who's ready to do it all in Alex Ballman. I'm excited for this offense. I don't think they're bad whatsoever. Now, the defense, I felt like the defensive line and the linebackers, the front seven, wasn't a huge issue. You could talk about Ruben Bain. I mean, where else do you start? He's a very talented player who's ready to have a big year. Justin Scott, by the way, huge recruit, and he's going into his second year. These guys on the defensive line could definitely help them out a lot. And then when you look at the linebackers, you got to like what you have with the experience. You have Aguirre Jr., Paul Aguirre Jr. coming back, or Raw Aguirre Jr. He's coming back, and he wasn't the starter last year, but Jalen Alderman is an experienced player that's also very much ready to contribute to that front seven. And then Wesley Bisanthe, I think I say that right, or Bisanthe. He's an experienced player who's been in the system a very long time and been at Miami a very long time. And he's a guy you can count on to be pretty solid. I think this front seven will be decent. I don't think it's going to be, amazing and like blow you away the way that Georgia, Alabama, Ohio State, Michigan has been able to in the past. But I think it's going to be really good. And I'm excited to see Justin Scott play in a more important role this upcoming season. Now, the secondary, I like what they did addressing the secondary. For starters, Xavier Lucas, look, the drama with all the NIL money around Wisconsin, that was a big pickup for them over at corner to go opposite of OJ Frederick. I think that was huge. I also really like Zechariah Poyser coming out over from Jacksonville State. After Rich Rod left, he hit the portal. I kind of assumed he would follow Rich Rod, but he's a really talented kid, a really good player. I believe he was first team all-conference a year ago. Zechariah Poyser is a name to remember. And Charles Brantley, as an Ohio State fan, it feels like he's been in college forever. He's got a lot of experience. I remember him getting torched by Marvin Harrison Jr. I think he's going to be pretty solid, and the pressure is not going to be super high on an experienced player like that, considering they are very good with the outside corners that they have. Jacoby Thomas is another guy to watch for, by the way, that plays safety, and then the younger one, Dylan Day. I'm going to be watching for that secondary because I think it's going to be much improved from a year ago, and they really, and I mean really, need that secondary to be much improved. So let's take a look at the schedule that the Miami Hurricanes have drawn for the 2025 season. All right, when you look at it, starting off on that opening Friday night against Notre Dame, that is going to be epic. I am super duper excited for that opening Friday night. We got a couple of really big games, and this one is chief among them. I think that this is probably going to be a preseason top 10, but at the very least, top 15 matchup. I'm going to release a post-spring ranking here sometime by Saturday night probably. I mean, it might be tonight. I haven't made up my mind yet with that, if I should do another preview or if I should do a top 25. But a little bit of a spoiler alert. Right now, I view both these teams as fringe top 10 to top 10 teams, and I think it could be a big game. I know it will be a big game, but setting the stage for the college football season, that would be huge. Bethune-Cookman and USF back at home now. USF, pretty solid program, but I'm curious to see if they can take that next step. They were very disappointing to me a year ago, and getting blown out against Miami was part of that disappointment. Florida, staying at home, staying in the state of Florida off the bye against Florida State. So if you notice, they do not go outside of the state of Florida until November when they travel to Dallas to play SMU. Now, Louisville, Stanford, back-to-back home games. We'll talk about that with the prediction. That's a Friday night against Louisville. Syracuse, NC State, back-to-back home games. Then they're on the road to finish the year at Virginia Tech, at Pittsburgh. I think generally speaking, the schedule gets easier. But the thing about the schedule being easier is both of the bye weeks are front loaded. Like, I do believe that's their toughest 3 games might be in the first 6. At the very least, the toughest 2 games are in the first 4. So this is a pretty front-loaded schedule that's manageable in the back end, especially for a college football playoff and ACC contender. And it's just a matter of, can they manage through ACC play to really make some noise and get into the college football playoff for the first time since the playoff has existed. Of course, second year of 12 team, but they never even sniffed a 14 playoff. I believe it was 2017, maybe they got their closest. Yeah, that's pretty rough for a pretty proud program who has a little bit of tradition going back through the 80s, in the early 90s, and then eventually in the early 2000s being one of the top programs in college football. They're going to try to recapture that, and they're going to be loud and heavy against Notre Dame. But I just think the physicality and experience of Notre Dame is going to be too much in that game. Notre Dame, when you talk about that offensive line, if you got a little bit of questions and you're not super sure how good the front seven is going to be, Notre Dame should be able to run all over you. And I think Notre Dame is going to be able to kind of grind this game out to a halt. I don't think they're going to get into a shootout with Miami. And quite honestly, I might think that Notre Dame is more capable of being in a shootout, even if that was the path to victory for Miami. So I think in all likelihood, the Miami Hurricanes start out 0-1, losing that big matchup against Notre Dame week 1. They will not have a problem beating Bethune-Cookman or USF. Now, USF, again, a little bit tougher of a game, but I already mentioned disappointment last year. They lose a good bit from last year's team as well. I'm not bought in to USF, at the very least, being able to compete in this game against the Miami Hurricanes. Florida is an interesting matchup. A lot of people are super duper high on the Florida Gators this upcoming year. And I do believe that defensively they're going to be really good. Second year of DJ Lagway, so you're going to expect that the turnovers are going to be cut down. And I'm going to throw this possibility out to you about Florida. Maybe DJ Lagway being hurt all spring could have been a blessing in disguise, because he's going to be in the film room. He's going to be learning more football, and he's going to be a master of this system that Florida is going to have. And at the end of the day, DJ Lagway could have a very big year, but there is a rust to playing football, playing actual games, or even in practice where the bullets are flying. It's early in the season. It's a road trip. It's going to be humid. I think Miami's better prepared for this game in September. I'm taking the Hurricanes to get back-to-back victories over the Gators, but I think it's going to be a great game. It's not going to be a blowout like last year. I think it's going to be a great game. Off the bye, what is Florida State? When we talked about, what team was that? Pittsburgh. When we talked about Pittsburgh and Florida State was on their schedule, I truly don't know what Florida State's going to be. It could be an absolute disaster, and they could pretty much recover. I don't think they're going to get back to the point that they were at in 2023, and I think that's what it's going to take to beat this year's Miami team in the ACC. I think Miami gets a big road victory sandwiched between byes against Florida State to improve to 4-1 as we hit the halfway mark of the season when it comes to time, right? Half of the dates have already been played as they go and play Louisville on that Friday night. Off a bye against Louisville, there are big concerns in my eyes, and I talked about this with Pittsburgh too, with that Louisville secondary. I think Jeff Brom tried to address it, but I don't think he successfully addressed it, and I still think it's a concern going into the 2025 season, and that's a bad matchup for a Shannon Dawson offense. And Stanford is a wreck and a mess. To me, they win both those games at home, especially off of a long week of rest, an extra day of rest and prep for the Stanford Cardinal. I think it won't be a problem. Miami beats both of them. They get to bowl eligibility at 6-1 before taking their first trip outside of the state of Florida, where they go to Dallas to play SMU. The thing about SMU is they are a lot more talented than people realize. A lot of the more casual, even if you're not casual fans, just see SMU and you think like, oh, group of five, whatever. No, they got money and they spent last year to get themselves to a playoff. Texas Tech is trying to copy that strategy. This is going to be a game now with an experienced quarterback on one side and an experienced quarterback on the other. It's a new system for Carson Beck, but by this point, he's going to be well adjusted to that new system. I think that they're a better team, and I think they're going to go on the road and gut out a victory on the road at SMU. It's going to be an incredible game, could be a deciding factor in the ACC championship race. And to me, if you're in the ACC, especially if you're Miami, thinking about last year, going 10-2 and losing those games late in the year, really costing you, those were 2 losses, right? I think if you're Miami or any team in the ACC, you should look to last year and be like, it is far from a guarantee that we make the playoff if we don't win the conference. Even SMU as an at-large team, they had an 11-1 regular season and undefeated in ACC play, lose on the last-second field goal, and they were the last team in the college football playoff. SMU, Miami, this is going to be a really, really important game, and these teams need to avoid hiccups if they want to make the playoff. Syracuse, NC State, both these games back at home. Syracuse is going to be tough now, and they beat this Miami team, but I think the improvement of the secondary is going to show up. I am not super high on NC State this year as well. Now, I've said this before about NC State, and you'll hear this all offseason. I think this could be a bounce back from you tried the transfer portal thing. All your best players came from the portal, and it didn't quite gel, and Grayson McCall got hurt. And now you got more of the developed at NC State guys that are in there. It could be a better season. It could be a bounce back. I'm not projecting it, and I'm not projecting them to beat the Miami Hurricanes. And I do think Miami patching up that secondary is going to help against a team like Syracuse with Stephen Jelly at the quarterback spot. At Virginia Tech. Now, if you remember last year, that game, Virginia Tech really should have won. Kyron Drones remembers that, and he's back, and they get Miami in Lane Stadium. This is a very, very tough spot. You've played 5 games in a row up to this point. It's starting to wear and tear on this Miami team, but I think they got out a road victory at Virginia Tech. Look, Virginia Tech last year, even with that was one of the best games that their offense and Kyron Drones had put together. Those receivers really played like I thought they could. They did not piece together consistency. I am very low on Virginia Tech going in this year. It's kind of this thing where if I'm high on a team and they did not prove me right, I'm going to kind of have the assumption that I shouldn't bet on you again. Virginia Tech is not a team that I'm going to bank on being really good this year. Now, the Pittsburgh Panthers, if you saw the Pitt video, you know what my prediction was for this game, obviously. And if you haven't, I would recommend going and finding it. And I'll put it up here somewhere. This Pitt team is going to be really tough this year, especially on offense. I like their experience on defense, but I think Eli Holstein, as long as he can stay healthy and he comes back from this injury just fine, I think Pittsburgh's a really dangerous team in the ACC. And I think that Miami, the wear and tear, now maybe Mario can get his team up, remembering what happened last year. Going into that game 10-1 against Syracuse, end up losing on the road. I think it happens again. Now, to me, it doesn't ruin Miami's hopes for an ACC championship. I have to play it out, obviously, through these predictions to see the different scenarios. But 7-1 in the ACC could very well be good enough for Miami to make the ACC championship. But having an 8-0 perfect record in the ACC, 11-1 regular season, the exact same as SMU a year ago, who made the playoff, that is going to really, really sting if the Miami Hurricanes end up falling late, like I predict them to. So 10-2, I think 11-1 is definitely a very strong possibility. I have a hard time seeing them go 12-0. And, honestly, I kind of feel like the floor should be 9-3 at this point. Look, Miami spends, the pressure should be there for Miami to win this year and win every single year that they're going to be spending money. I mean, we just saw them drop all that money on Jackson Cantwell, the number one tackle in the 2026 class. I think that Miami, with the money that they're spending and the coaching staff that they have and the talent that they have, they better win at least 9 games a year. But at the very least, you got to be thinking, if you're a Miami fan, that we got to start competing for national championships. We're Miami. We're the Canes. We've always been able to get talent. We have the talent. Do we have the coaches? That's the question that Miami fans are facing, and we'll see if 10-2 or 11-1 ends up happening this year, and if they can make the ACC championship and eventually college football playoff. Thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure you request down below, and I'll see you guys in the next video.